On the long, winding road to the World Cup, some games just feel different. They're not just 90 minutes, they're potential turning points. Today, we're jumping into a 5-goal thriller between Hungary and Portugal to really see how one single dramatic result can totally change the game for two nations. It's the question every fan, every player, every coach asks. What's the difference between winning and losing when the stakes are this high? Is it the game plan, team chemistry, or is it sometimes just one single moment of magic? Well, we're about to see how all of that played out in one heck of a match. All right, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of this one game, you gotta appreciate the bigger picture. We're talking about the World Cup here, the biggest prize in all of sports. But getting there, that's a whole other beast. It's a brutal, multi-year marathon we call the Qualifiers. And let me tell you, especially in Europe, these qualifiers are an absolute pressure cooker. There is zero room for a bad day at the office. You've got national pride, players' legacies, and literally the dreams of millions of people riding on every single match. One little slip-up can completely derail a team's entire journey. And that intense, high-stakes environment, that's exactly where our story takes place. We've got a super competitive group, and Hungary and Portugal are about to face off in a match with huge, huge implications for who gets to the top of the table. So, in one corner, you've got a Hungarian team that's been on the rise, fighting to bring back some of their old glory days. And in the other corner, Portugal, a team that's always a powerhouse, just stacked with global superstars. But here's the thing about the qualifiers. Reputation means absolutely nothing. It all comes down to what happens in those 90 minutes. So how did it all go down? Well, this was not some cautious, boring game of chess. No way. This was an all-out war, end-to-end action that had everybody on the edge of their seats right up until that final whistle. Five total goals were scored in this match. I mean, that number alone tells you pretty much everything you need to know, right? Non-stop action, loads of drama, and two defenses that were just stretched to their absolute limit. And here it is, the final score. Portugal just barely gets the win, 3-2. A single goal. After 90 minutes of both teams just going for it, it all came down to that razor-thin margin. That's how tough these qualifiers can be. In a game this tight, one decided by a single goal, you always end up looking for that one defining moment, that one play that just tipped the scales. And yeah, in this match, that moment came from one of the greatest to ever play the game. So picture this. The score is 2-2, the clock is winding down, everybody's exhausted, but both teams are desperately pushing for that winning goal. This is when you need your biggest players to do something special. And Portugal's hero delivered. Cristiano Ronaldo comes up with the decisive goal. Now look, this was a battle from both sides, plenty of goals to go around. But in the end, it was that one moment of pure individual brilliance that made all the difference and sealed the win for Portugal. So, a 3-2 final score. What does that actually mean, beyond the numbers? Well, for these two teams, this single result sends massive ripples through their entire World Cup campaign. This is where it gets real. Yeah, it's a pretty simple but brutal reality. For Portugal, this is huge. 3 crucial points that give them a little breathing room in a really tough group, pushing them that much closer to qualifying. But for Hungary, this is a tough one to swallow. Now, their margin for error is basically gone. They've got a much, much harder climb ahead of them. And that right there is just a perfect reminder of what's on the line. Every single game, every point can completely change a nation's path and their World Cup dream. It's all the drama of the qualifiers wrapped up in 90 minutes. So the big question is, when we look back on this whole qualifying journey, are we going to point to this wild 5-goal game as the moment it all changed? The day Portugal basically punched their ticket? And maybe the day Hungary's dreams started to slip away? I guess only time's going to tell.